I'm so excited you made time for us today, Sheriff Udell. It
Sure.
just means the world. You are doing amazing things at the Sheriff's Department. I was fortunate enough to see you at the Rotary presentation, and I thought it's important for citizens in Yakima and those considering a relocation to Yakima, what's really happening with our crime scene? What are actions that you are taking, your department as well as a community as a whole? But if we could just start, tell us a little bit about you, how many years you've been in being a sheriff and living in Yakima and all that stuff.
Right on. So I have been sheriff in my 6 years as sheriff, but I'm with the sheriff's office for 35.
Oh.
And so I've been doing that a long time. Was born and raised here in Yakima. I went to Highland High School, then I went to WSU and came home. Did Go Cougs. Went to worked with my dad on the fruit ranch for several years, and then decided that I was going to do something different.
Okay.
Law enforcement wasn't my first plan, but here I am, right? Over 3 decades later, and I have found it to be a great career. Yakima County has been challenging at times. We are known across the region for some things that probably is unfair.
Yeah.
Because Yakima is a great place to live.
It is.
My wife and I ride motorcycles all the time, and when we come back, we always just wonder or see how great it is when we come home. It's if we were going into some place we'd never seen before look like this, we would say, wow.
Yeah.
Look at this place.
My dad always refers as Yakima they travel quite a bit. He always said, just another day in paradise. And you get to appreciate it when you go other places to recognize what an incredible valley we have.
You do. You do.
How many people do you serve in Yakima County?
Yakima County is around 250,000 people. It's close to 100,000 the sheriff's office directly is involved with. But as the sheriff's office, we're ultimately responsible for everything. Okay. So the sheriff's office, the sheriff is the top law enforcement officer at any county in Washington State and generally across the United States. So all issues seem to land in my office.
One of the things I get frustrated with is a 1980s story of Yakima, and I am so tired of that. Can you speak to what's really happening now and just be as honest as possible with the drug scene here? Because that is such an objection for people, and I want them to have a perspective on what's really happening. You bet.
So, when we travel, again, this back to the motorcycle, we go places and people will say, well, first of all, they see the license plate on the bike and, are you from Seattle? Oh, no, not from Seattle. I'm from Yakima. And the reaction often is, oh, yeah, you guys have problems there, don't you? And I find that to be upsetting. Yeah. Because it's not that bad here. Do we have issues? Absolutely. Yakima County, any community does. A lot of times when my wife and I are riding through a place and we look at it and we go, this is fantastic, but we don't see everything that's going on. Right. Now, I have a very realistic view of Yakima County because of what I deal with. Yes. Right? I know everything that's the good and the bad, much more the bad than most people know about. Right.
Thank goodness, I don't want to know.
Yeah, but it's not like people think. And that's a problem for us. So very often when I talk to people, I said there's 2 things Yakima County needs to do. Number 1, we need to make a realistic effort for public safety. We have to. We got to show people that we're doing that. Number 2, we got to work on the perspective. What do other people think of us? How do we do that? That's like Chamber of Commerce stuff, right? Making sure that the media's out there good, showing all the good stuff in Yakima County. But what kind of issues do we have? We unfortunately are a thoroughfare for legal drugs. That happens. It comes through. That's been going on for decades.
And it has a lot to do with our highway, proximity of the highway, right? Centrally located.
It comes right up here. Yep. There's a lot less law enforcement on 97 than say I-5, so that stuff comes up here, then it gets distributed everywhere. And because of the drugs, we have a higher than average number of gang members per population. It's high, right? Hispanic gangs in this county are among the highest in the region. And with that comes violence. And so our homicide rate is high throughout the region. Now, having said that, and we see that violence and we investigate those homicides, does the average person in Yakima County, are they affected by homicides? No.
No. Isn't it more gang on gang?
Absolutely.
Right?
Now, I'm not going to tell you, sometimes we do have what we call an innocent or not involved person that's killed by a gang member or other types of violence. But generally, it is much more dangerous to drive home in your car. That's just the way it is, right? But so what do we got to do to pack that reputation back down to where it should be? So in Yakima County, we don't have a lot of deputies, we don't have a lot of police officers, and so there's probably 3 things we'll talk about that we're doing to make things better. The first one is collaboration, and that is huge. And we're finally getting to a sweet spot where all of the agencies are working together to do that.
I'll tell you, that Rotary meeting, like I mentioned to you before, was so impactful. To understand, it felt like the first time it was really a relationship building between you, judge, chief of police, prosecuting attorneys, to finally pull everybody in to understand, so that you can lean on each other, share information with each other, instead of being these little islands within, right?
And it's easy to become islands. Even though we share a data system, you can see the islands and how the agencies are doing stuff without being integrated and attacking the same problems, because we share the problems.
Right.
Crime travels. They drive around in cars, right? That's what they do.
Right.
And it's amazing. People think there's thousands of criminals out there. No, there isn't. We know who they are.
Yeah.
There's just a few, and we need to share that information so all the communities understand where those people are and when we need to attack them, right? Need to strike back. The number one way we're collaborating right now is through the new crime lab, which is revolutionary. Now, this is something that I've talked to other sheriffs and police chiefs, and the last place they thought that would happen is Yakima County. And that's where it's happening.
Yeah.
We're setting the model for the same type of projects all across the Northwest and probably across the United States, where all these different agencies are pooling their resources so that they have modern investigative criminal analysis and evidence work.
Can you talk about, that was one of the big takeaways from your meeting, why that was so important? Talk about the timeliness and how that allows you to spring into action and get the bad guys.
Oh, absolutely. You know, modern law enforcement, when I started, we I don't want to date myself, but everything was on paper and all that kind of stuff. Well, today we have the advantage of all these modern data systems, but they're only as good as what you put in and then, of course, what you take out.
Sure.
And modern law enforcement relies on analysis of telephones after search warrants, DNA evidence, right? The analysis of firearms and the spent shell casings left behind.
Right.
Fantastic tools, but when you rely on other people to do it for you, it takes time.
Right.
State Patrol Crime Lab has been doing all of that, except for the phones. We've done phones here as well.
Okay.
But it takes time, and you send that stuff off. They are absolutely swamped with all these things coming in that need to be analyzed.
Because one crime lab is handling multiple agencies sending it. Oh,
300 and some agencies, and they have backlogs of months to even years for some types of DNA. It's going to get better. We think it's going to get better, but we needed to help ourselves. And so through the crime lab, and using ARPA money that the Yakima County Commissioners approved, we ended up buying a NIBIN machine which tracks spent casings. Fantastic device, because they shoot and then it leaves the casing behind, and maybe it was only shooting a stop sign, but we can determine if that gun was used in other crimes, and then maybe witness saw who was in the car that time. It's a puzzle, right? It's all these little pieces. And then the DNA. The DNA is huge for us. We won't have access to the big data centers yet, you know, the pool of information.
Like FBI level?
FBI, yes, what we call CODIS, but that's coming. In months or a year, we'll be able to hook into it. But we can start using that machine for direct comparisons. So if we have, let's say, 2 people that we think are suspects in a homicide, and if they volunteer or we get a search warrant for their DNA, and we have crime scene DNA, we can do comparison. And we don't have to wait months or years. We can do it in a matter of hours.
Oh, fantastic.
Now that's huge, because witnesses move, witnesses die, suspects leave. You got to have that stuff timely, and we're doing it. Cell phones are huge. I probably talked about that at Rotary. Cell phones are really big. Everyone carries a cell phone around with them, and bad guys do too when they do crimes, and so it tracks their movements, their friends. They take pictures of themselves doing things they shouldn't, and so there's the phone. But those things are huge in data. It takes a long time to download them. I had a detective, YPD had a detective trained in using the software, which is huge training and expensive to do to track these cell phones, but we're not doing them for every crime, only the very, very serious ones. Now with the crime lab, those folks down there are going to be able to do it much better, because they're going to be better trained, and that's going to be their job to do it.
So the bad guys aren't dropping the phones?
Very rarely.
No, they are keeping them, keeping the same line.
Oh, absolutely.
Interesting.
No, absolutely.
You know, the movies would be my perspective where they're changing their phones all the time or something, but no.
Not a whole lot.
No, it's not
The
that
cell phone, all your
sophisticated.
information's in it.
Oh, it's crazy.
They want to keep it. And so when we get that cell phone, it is a treasure trove. But now we can start using it for less serious crimes, for assaults and burglaries, property crimes, because all of the bad crimes come out of things like property crimes.
Okay.
And if we start attacking those and getting good convictions, we're likely going to prevent the more serious crimes like homicides down the road. That's the goal.
Okay.
So there may be a flurry of more investigations to begin with, but the goal is to have less crime, the less need for this stuff.
So when you start infiltrating these gangs with all this information, you're going after them, will that drive them out? Are they like, okay, this is an unpleasant place. They keep coming after me. I've had it. I'm moving on. You know,
one of the primary crime fighting strategies is simply make the bad guy move.
Okay.
Make him move across the street or into a different county, hopefully into a different city, right?
Right.
And with the drug trafficking comes some pretty sophisticated criminals.
Right.
So that's the next part of collaboration. While we're getting all this local information that we're going to be able to put together, and with gals that are going to analysts that will make sure that we have the right information, because when you have lots of evidence like that, it can be piles of evidence and piles of data. So we got to have someone who's really good at working those systems so that the detectives and the deputies and the officers get just what they need.
Okay.
Because if you serve up a lot of information to a detective, he or she's going to look at that and they're going to, you know, it's just overwhelmed. They got so much to do. So analytics is huge, but it's the federal partners.
Okay.
And that is big. The U.S. Attorney from Spokane, her name is Vanessa, and she's the second one in a row that recognizes that Yakima County is a great place to put federal resources. Why? Because they help Yakima County, they help the whole state.
Right.
And that's very, very important. And so with that has come more FBI agents, more DEA agents. We have a very significant U.S. Marshal presence, and that is working. ATF is here, and they all work with us on task force, because look, the feds really can't be effective unless they have local partners.
Sure.
They just can't do it. The deputies and officers, they really know what's going on out there.
Right.
And having those type of resources infused is helping, along with federal prosecution then.
One of the things that you also shared was collaboration again with the Chief of Police, Prosecuting Office, and so forth. Tell us why this new relationship or collaboration that we were seeing, why that is helping combat crime at a faster pace.
When the bad guys do things and go from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, often in the old way of silos, we wouldn't know what's going on. But now we're going to start trading information so that we can attack. We know who, if Jimmy's doing something he shouldn't in the city of Yakima, now we're going to have the ability to make sure that everybody knows what Jimmy's doing and where Jimmy goes. A lot of times, Jimmy may live in the city of Yakima, but he goes down to Hera and causes problems, or goes to Toppenish.
Okay.
Sometimes they'll do that. This way we'll all be on the same page. It's going to be huge. And then with the prosecutor, having the most up-to-date information helps with prosecutions like you can't believe, and not having to wait for the information. The biggest one for that, DNA, where entire prosecutions are on ice waiting for that confirmation that takes months, even years. Again, they get that busy, but we're going to have that, at least an investigative confirmation real quick, and we probably will look at doing blood analysis for like drunk driving. Because those labs the state labs are absolutely swamped and can take months, and with speedy trial rules, if you're a defendant and a defense attorney, no, you push for that speedy trial, gambling that the state lab will not get that information back in time. And guess what? Sometimes they don't. Then the case just goes away. If we have our own lab and we're discovering it's not going to be that expensive to do, but we need more room, we need more space, that's the next goal, is a new facility, we'll be able to have those toxicology stuff back
So fast.
Maybe even hours. So here we are looking at Yakima with this, the Crackama, you mentioned this Crackama thing, instead being a leader in law enforcement and public safety.
Yep.
and not necessarily with huge infusions of money, but by working better together, right, with the right tools right here so we can get stuff done.
Do you have specific initiatives that are built within the Sheriff's Department, or is it a Yakima County in terms of crime prevention that you work towards? 5-year plans, 10-year strategies, that kind of thing?
The way we work at it is for the Sheriff's Office is countywide, and that means work with all the different agencies. I only have right now 62 deputies, and this 4,300 square miles. That is a lot of area. So most of the time, we're very, very reactive. We're like firefighters almost, right? We have to go after it happens. So the goal is getting us all work together, be much more proactive, because we know who the bad guys are. And if we develop that list of targets, and even to the point you knock on their door and say, hey Jimmy, just want to let you know that you're on our list. So you either change your tune or move, or you're going to go to prison. One of the two, or one of the three. There you go, right? You got 3 options. And that's what we're going to start doing. And it's exciting to see how this is all coming together.
I would imagine the entire team just feels so much more empowered now that they get to step into being more proactive than constantly on the defense.
Yeah, proactive policing is something all cops want to do, but they get behind the curve, and it's just that next call, that next call, that next call. Instead, we want to get to the point where we have time. We're creating what we call a proactive team. It'll be 6 deputies, 5 deputies and a sergeant that will be tasked with, a sergeant and 4 deputies, and they're going to go after the bad guys and the problem children and the problem houses and known issues that a patrol deputy or officer never has the time to really attack. Because they get that next call, right? Instead, the proactive team. So that's also very exciting to get that up and running, because they'll work very closely with the crime lab, right, with information they develop on where the hot spots are, and then with all the other agencies.
Can you give a perspective of other communities that are similar in size to Yakima, had this access also off of the highway like we do? Because we can't change our location. But have been able to sort of roll back their crime rate and so forth?
You know, that's a really good question. But you see areas in the United States where agencies work together with modern technology and they can control their crime. And that's what we're aiming for. Now, often they have a lot better resources when you have the bigger metropolitan areas, more tax money comes in. They have advantages we don't. So that's why it's so critical that we get on this technology bandwagon and work together. There's no other way. You know, there's no agency in this county that can truly impact crime in their community without working together. We just can't do it. We don't have the resources. So it's a new era for that.
Can you talk about why community involvement is a critical piece to fighting crime?
Oh, if you don't have community involvement with your law enforcement, you don't have effective law enforcement. That's just the way it is. We rely on people to tell us where the issues are, to collaborate with us. If people don't call us, people don't want to be witnesses. If they don't, and unfortunately don't want to be victims, because that happens too, then we just don't know what's going on, and we become totally ineffective. So nationally, you see, or the discussion about these relationships with law enforcement and how when they deteriorate, things get worse. Okay, same thing can happen. Now, a sheriff's office, I'm lucky. Sheriff's offices are often very, very connected to the people we serve. We don't struggle a whole lot with that. Police departments can get busier and sometimes get disconnected because they're in the cars, right? You got to get them out of the cars. And it's important, though, that we have that relationship with the community. And we work on that all the time. You'll see us at fairs and at parades, and I go to all sorts of
farmers market.
You name it, and we're there because it's important that we interact. Because it really bugs me when people talk about, well, it's the police. And no, we're not the police. We are people who have the job of public safety in your community. We have kids that play on soccer teams, right? We go to the movies like everybody else. That's just our job. We're part of the community, not the police. And we need to make sure that people understand that that's who we are. We're very approachable. When I was much younger deputy, I was a DARE officer for like 5 years. And I went into the schools every single day, and it was a great program. And I don't know, you always wonder how many kids you stay off drugs. Who knows? Because I'll admit I arrested lots of those kids later on. But we created relationships, and they found out that that cops are people too.
Yeah.
And that was probably the #1 thing. We enjoy that with our SROs.
What are RSRs?
The school resource officer.
Oh, okay.
Same thing, that when they get into a school, the kids become extremely friendly with them. They love them there. Last year, we had a deputy in a school district. There was talk of him leaving, and the kids were going to stage a walkout.
They loved him so much.
Yeah, they were, nope, they didn't want him to leave. So it shows you that they're very, very successful.
Yeah.
You'll hear sometimes from certain groups that the SROs, the cops in the school, are bad, and they're there to, to hammer the kids. Not at all. No.
They're building relationships.
They're building relationships, and they're there to protect the kids from the outside stuff.
Yeah.
Not to walk the halls with, swinging a baton.
Right.
That just doesn't happen.
No. And I think to also not be afraid to approach an officer. If they're used to seeing somebody in their environment, then it's a friendly person.
Absolutely.
It's not a negative experience.
Exactly.
Right?
And I was talking to one of our lieutenants, used to be an SRO. I was chatting with him at Waspic about this very topic. And he said when he first went into the school, he said there's always some kids that love cops and come running up and want to talk to you. But there's a lot that were like, well, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Very standoffish. And he said over a matter of time, and we're not talking months, days and weeks, those kids realize why they're there. And pretty soon, everyone wants to talk to the deputy.
Engage, understand.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's so awesome. It's so awesome.
It's a great program. And it costs us money. The schools do. They pay a big chunk, but then I have to front up the rest of it. But it's worth it.
It is.
Because the schools are the center of the community.
Yeah, 100%. One of the other topics that I found really interesting, and I think people watching would be surprised to learn, is how domestic violence is really a core indicator of continued violence going forward, and how it's reflective of crime. Is that a fair statement? Am I describing that right?
It is.
And and with the expansion at the YWCA and what they're trying to do is so impressive. Can you speak to how that's sort of a beginning part of what can lead to more fatal crimes?
Absolutely, more serious stuff.
More serious stuff.
Right. Domestic violence is something that we see a lot in this valley. I remember when I worked patrol, it seemed like you went to a DV once or twice or 3 times a day.
Why?
All the time.
Why is it? Is it economic stress?
That is a big part of it. Economics is a big part. Although I've been in domestics or handled domestics in very wealthy homes, all the way down to homes that have very, very little. But the overall economic status of Yakima County, we are very agriculture here, which means we have a lot of folks that work in the ag industry. Ag industry is not known for, top shelf salaries, and that can lead to some of these conditions, this economic hardships that lead to other pressures, alcohol and drug use that leads to more serious domestics. We unfortunately, that's another one of those areas that we tend to be in the top of, is domestics. The city of Yakima has put a lot of effort into attempting through the law enforcement, but probably domestics aren't so much a law enforcement issue, but as a community issue. And that's when you mention like the YWCA and these other programs to get the causation tamped down. That's where you're going to get it, so that people understand that there's better ways to resolve arguments. Are there economic situations? What is going on? The alcohol use, the drug use that causes a lot of that stuff.
I was just so taken aback by it, and I was also surprised when they threw up the map to see where it's at, and it was deep into West Valley. And I was at a table and guilty of it, really thinking it was going to be central and east side of Yakima, and that was not the case.
Oh no,
it is across the county.
It is across
all
the county,
demographics, all income levels, and that really took me back. I was surprised by that.
It's kind of a statement of our society right now, and some of the things that are acceptable.
Unique to Yakima.
It is not. It is not. But if you want to solve it, if you want your community to be better at it, it is going to be. It's a community issue. It's not a law enforcement issue. You're not going to send a bunch of cops out there in explorers and think you're going to tamp it down. Again, totally reactionary. We can help after the fact, but what led up to it? And that's where the nonprofits and the YWCA, that's where they become so critical.
I had the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Trevor Green, Superintendent Yakima Schools, earlier in the week, and he was talking about the program in the event there is a domestic violence. We use that as an example in a household. Law enforcement contacts the school then notifies all the teachers. They can circle around their student and support them through what was likely a very traumatic evening.
Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah. Incredible.
It really has the potential of helping a kid or kids involved in something and make sure they get help, make sure they're okay.
Yeah.
And that can be pretty powerful, just alerting a teacher to understanding that you've got a young man in your class that last night witnessed something that was pretty bad.
Yep.
And so it's really good. We've now, it started at the city of Yakima, and now we have it spread throughout the county.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. And ESD 105 got a grant to help facilitate that transfer, all that information. So it's a good deal.
I think it's important for viewers and people considering a move to Yakima to understand we are taking action. We recognize the black eyes in our community, but we're doing things about it. We've put these things into place.
Probably more than in my career.
Yeah.
And that's the best part.
That's
yeah.
Awesome.
Because there are issues. And, you know, my wife that's over there watching behind the camera, she's heard me say a lot of this stuff multiple times. And frankly, I'm kind of sick and tired of going places and people going, whoa, Yakima County, that's kind of a tough place, isn't it? Because it's not that bad. But we do have those things that have led to that reputation, and now that reputation has outsized it, so we need to bring it back in. And again, like it goes right back to the beginning of our conversation, where it does the elected leaders in law enforcement, public safety, because without good public safety, that's the foundation of any successful community. Yeah. And then, of course, that effort to let people know that this is a pretty good place to live.
I want people to feel safe.
They have to, or they won't move here.
They won't move here.
Or they'll leave.
Right.
You know, and that's a big deal.
Honestly, the questions they ask me sometimes, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, it has not been in my world at all. I'm like, you can go into downtown Seattle, you could go to downtown Puyallup. Every city is going to have their central. Don't go there in the middle of the night.
We've spent the last 3 days in Spokane. Downtown Spokane is rough.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It didn't used to be.
No, communities have those issues. It comes down to, is the community willing to make the effort to make it better? And I know that our elected leaders get tired of me saying it. Our own Board of County Commissioners, I've told them multiple times, we're leaders. We need to make a change. Not just the same old stuff and worrying about the bottom line more than anything else, but what do we do to make a change?
So much of this series, Living in Yakima, is, my experience has been that Yakima is its own worst enemy. We are so critical of our own community that when I do help people relocate here and they're just like, well, aren't you just a ray of sun? I'm like, this is a great place to live. It's centrally, I can be in the mountains hiking 10 minutes from my house, skiing in 45 minutes, fly fishing on the river. Are you kidding me? And I don't have to pay for parking, and I don't sit in traffic. I'm like, if you like all of those things, why wouldn't you want to live here? So it's really helping Yakima say, this is a beautiful place.
Yakima has great potential. Yeah. We, last year, Wendy Baker, the nurse that was tragically killed on a bicycle, my wife and I put together a little gift basket for the fundraiser, I think to begin her scholarship fund. There you go. Well, in this basket, and it was pretty funny, she put it together, had a sheriff's office hat and some t-shirts, that kind of crap in it, and water bottle, a certificate for donuts, right? Okay, that was pretty funny. Yeah, that was a good idea. But I also put in there a gift card for a tour of Yakima County with the sheriff. A tour like you'll never get anywhere else.
I love it.
And the winner was a pair of young docs that had come to Yakima a couple of years ago. They work at, now Memorial Multicare. And they were 40 years old. I think one was 38, the other was 42. So we'll say 40. And it was good for me. They came from Iowa. And they deliberately chose Yakima. Now they saw some things that they admitted they would have never seen on their own, but they also saw places that they take people that are incredible. They thought, this is amazing. It is. This is Yakima County. But what was so cool about these two was they told me that they love it here and they want to be part of the move to make this make Yakima even better. And they said the biggest critics of Yakima are the people who've lived here a long time. She said, we have other friends, young friends that have come here as well, and they think it's great too.
Yeah.
So it is a great time to start making some changes. There is support out there to make Yakima what it can be. Back to what it was when I was a kid.
Yeah. Oh my God, we rode our bikes everywhere, and
Oh yeah, I disappeared for the entire day. My mom didn't worry about where I was. They knew I'd be home at dinner.
Yeah, that's all.
And no one worried that I was gonna be snatched off my bike.
No.
I didn't worry about that either.
No.
But we can do that. It's very possible to have a safe community.
this was important. I want people to regain confidence in the idea of living here and moving here, and I get all excited. So thank you very
absolutely.
much.
And there's
Thank you so much for
we have a
sharing that.
bunch of young cops out there, both deputies, police officers that are go-getters, and they want to make a change. They're doing the job for the right reason.
Yeah.
And so
Passionate about community.
it's very neat time. I love hearing from people about things we're doing well and things that we can do better at.
Yeah, it's important to celebrate the wins. It really is.
It is, and my guys and gals give us lots of successes every day. They do great stuff. We're not perfect. Every so often, we realize, well, you try that one again. But
But we're doing the work.
oh yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
It's really good stuff.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for the invitation.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Sheriff Udell. I know I did. Be sure to like and subscribe for more Living in Yakima.